Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they come in. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. And the counting is getting underway in one by-election and local councils across the country, the first electoral test since the general election last July. Donald Trump has reshuffled his top team, moving his national security advisor Mike Waltz to the more junior role of US ambassador to the United Nations. And today was the UK's hottest 1st of May on record, with 29.3 degrees Celsius recorded at Kew Gardens. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the news then, with the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the political journalist Zoe Grunewald. Welcome and great to see both of you. Come on to Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, as was, for Trump in a moment. First of all, though, front page of the Financial Times, the polling station, the first electoral test for the government, and indeed, one might argue, Kemi Badenoch, Farage in reform as well, Ed Davies too. What are we expecting, Henry, first of all, and what should we be looking out for?
Well, essentially, if things go roughly as predicted, it will be a very good night for reform. Pollsters disagree on exactly how good, but good. There's maybe one council that they could potentially win outright, but they will probably have a big breakthrough into a lot of groups in a lot of those councils. A very bad night for the Conservatives. I think Kemi Badenoch and her team would be quite keen to establish that this is not really a test because it's too soon after she became leader. That's the line. And then for Labour, it's a question of where are they losing to reform and how badly? And that means basically MPs will be looking at these results and being like, OK, what danger am I in if I'm in a red wall seat or a seat in the north of England where suddenly reform is doing very well? What impact will that have on the government? And then also, against the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. Because the Conservatives, they did very badly in the last general election, but their seats are not particularly safe. And there will be Tory MPs with narrow majorities. And if suddenly there's a well-organised Green campaign or a well-organised Lib Dem campaign and they lose a whole bunch of councillors, who will suddenly be thinking, hold on a minute, even if there's a lab to con swing at the next election, I could get picked off here. And that's going to start pulling Kemi Badenoch in a completely different direction as well.
I think we've got pictures, or we have pictures of Doncaster, which is the metropolitan district, being voted on, mayor as well, I think, there too. So 14 county councils, 8 unitary councils, 1 metropolitan district. This one, about 1,270 parish councils, 6 mayoral elections with existing mayors. That's 4 of them, 2 with new, and 6 county councils postponed elections till next year because their status might be changing. So, I mean, in a sense, it's 23 out of England's 317 local authorities. It's not the biggest one in the world, is it? But nonetheless, you know, was this a high watermark for the Conservatives? Is that why it's looking like it might be a bad night for them in this electoral cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. They knew they were going to get a bit of a thrashing, and as Henry said, you know, there's already a lot of expectation management going on, which there always is at this point, but a particularly large amount coming on from Kemi Badenoch's camp, which is that, you know, this was always going to happen because it was always a slightly delayed response or reaction to what's happened to the Conservatives over the past few years. But also, it's just far too soon for anyone to pin it on Kemi Badenoch's leadership because of that. Having said that, there are things here that are going to make Labour nervous as well. So, for example, the by-election in Runcorn, it's so close. And actually, for the last few days, pollsters have been saying that they thought reform might have it. There was some quite positive noises from Labour this afternoon, I noticed. A few people saying they think they might have held on to it. But even if they do hold on to it, and that is that very, very close vote, you know, this is one of Labour's safest seats. So even if reform is snapping at their heels, that should be a warning sign. And I don't think there'll be any complacency in Labour camp tonight.
Has the impact of Donald Trump had any impact on reform in the UK?
Not so far as we've really seen yet. It really seems to have hurt, for example, the Canadian Conservatives. But Canada is, for obvious reasons, particularly exposed to America. And that's partly because of simply where it is, but also because the Canadian Conservatives, their modern heartlands in Alberta are much more like the Republican South in America than almost anywhere else in the English-speaking world, very resource-led, very rural. Farage has obviously been having a few months ago, been saying his close relationship with the president could be a national asset, has been putting a bit of water, but let's face it, most of the people thinking about voting for reform don't really care. Fair enough, it's a council election, right? I don't think fighting a council election on Donald Trump is a particularly sensible thing to do anyway. So no, I think reform are going to benefit from people disappointed with Labour, but only 4 years ago they voted Conservative, so they're going to vote for somebody else. The question is, UKIP always struggled in local government. Even when it won councils, its councillors, being a councillor is a job, right? And it involves doing lots of dreary things like managing bin collections and all the rest of it. So actually, I think the test for reform will be, can they prove to their voters, because no one minded when it was the European Parliament that they didn't really do anything, because no one cared about the European Parliament. People do care about their council. And so the question is, can reform, after winning these seats, if they do have the opportunity to go into, for example, coalition with the Conservatives in a borough, can they prove that they can actually govern?
Yes, well, they'll have to verify the votes, as we know, before they start counting. Probably haven't started counting. They bring the boxes in now, as we can see from those pictures in Doncaster. But our coverage from midnight is with Jonathan Samuels, and Sophie Ridge will be taking results through the morning. So plenty more overnight on the election and that by-election, local council and that by-election, as you mentioned. In the meantime, could an incumbent government be helped by the economy, not least interest rates, which takes us to the Times?
Yeah, so the Times is reporting that interest rates are set to fall at their fastest rate since 2008. So the Bank of England is expected to cut rates from 4.5% to 4.25% next week. And they say this is the first in what is likely of a series of back-to-back cuts. Obviously, this is good. Some good news for the Chancellor here, so there might be more fiscal headroom for that borrowing, you know, that elusive borrowing that she's not been able to do thus far, that headroom that keeps getting wiped out by something that Trump's doing across the pond. Also, some financial relief for homeowners and families. You might see a bit of housing market stimulus as well there for people who are maybe hoping to sell. Having said that, there's still a lot of uncertainties. We're still not sure what's going to happen with Donald Trump's tariffs. We're not sure if the trade war is going to worsen, if it's going to get, how much it's going to impact us, and all the other things going on globally that seem to keep impacting us. And also the fact that Rachel Reeves, as she keeps saying, doesn't have a lot to play with anyway. So a little bit of light relief here. Hopefully this will relieve the cost of living a little bit for homeowners and hopefully renters as well. But we'll see. It's coming down from a high base, so whether people really feel that is a different issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's the comparison with the crash. I mean, the reduction in the crash was from 4.5 to 0.5%. And then it stayed at functionally near zero for about 10 years. This is not that. I mean, there's an optimistic assessment here, which is that it might go down below 3, but that's obviously, compared to people who were borrowing 10 years ago, a very different proposition. It will be a boon for homeowners, but obviously the long-term challenge for the government is that if you make mortgages cheaper, you pump more credit into the housing market, and if you're not building up houses, in the long run, that just makes houses even more expensive. So it's one of those sort of good for today, but if they don't get house building up, it will be bad in the medium term. But obviously, any government, if you give them an option, would you like interest rates to go up or down? In these environments is going to pick down. So, yeah, so congratulations, Rachel Reeves.
We'll see what happens, shall we? Yeah. Let's go to the eye, shall we? And, you know, again, an electoral issue is migration, you know, legal or illegal. And this is about cracking down on, a migration scam, so specifically in the care sector, yes?
Yeah, so obviously we know that the Home Secretary and the leadership have been talking a lot about immigration, and part of this is about trying to repark their tanks on reform's lawn and try and win back some of those voters who seem to care a lot about immigration. But this is an interesting policy because actually there has been a lot of concern raised by people on the left of the party, actually, about how care worker visas have been exploited by sort of unscrupulous businesses, or it's probably quite generous to even call them businesses. In some cases, you know, this has been identified as almost modern slavery, the conditions that people are being brought over in. So people exploiting migrants, you know, in some cases taking their passports away, trapping them in you know, really terrible conditions. And the Home Secretary is saying that she wants to stop this from happening. So there's going to be an immigration white paper, and they're going to be looking specifically about these health and care visas, which they say have allowed rogue bosses to abuse positions as sponsors for these people.
Well, this is difficult, isn't it? Because health and social care were each given exemptions, weren't they, under the Tory crackdown? Different exemptions, but for the necessity that you need foreign staff coming in.
We'll put crackdown in scare quotes there.
Okay,
I'm not sure if there ever was a Tory crackdown in a real sense. But the social care visa was a terrible policy, right? Because not because you don't need some sort of social care visa, but they went with a version that had absolutely no safeguards whatsoever, right? And so this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Yes, it is absolutely the case that there are people posting fraudulent posting fraudulent job vacancies, which some cases is modern slavery, in other cases it's just short-circuiting the immigration system, right? You can essentially pay for a fake sponsorship that gets you through. But even beyond that, there's no controls over the age of the people coming here, how many dependents they can bring, and so on, which means that you can have somebody coming over in their 40s who will work a very low-wage job for a few years, bring over several dependents, and the net costs to the exchequer of bringing that person over the course of their lifespan in this country is enormous. And yet it was a panic button, right? It was a, oh my God, we want to avoid an immediate crisis, let's not do the work. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this, but this is an excellent start. The question is, once you've dealt with the rogue bosses, what do you do about the fact that this entire sector currently is being propped up by Labour that we're bringing in the long term in a way that costs this country a lot of money?
Let's go to the Telegraph now, shall we? And after the supposed comments by Tony Blair on net zero and its likely success, there seems to be a doubling down and a unity between Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner. So what's this story about then?
Yeah, so the headline is Miliband and Rayner unite to save net zero, presumably from Tony Blair and everyone else who has net zero in their sights. So they say that the Energy and Housing Secretaries are going to join forces on new rules for house builders, which will require new builds to have heat pumps, but also for gas boilers in new homes to be banned, they say, as soon as next year, which is obviously not a lot of time for industry to prepare. But obviously this is both Rayner and Miliband's brief, because Miliband is the Energy Secretary in net zero and Rayner, of course, is in charge of housing. But they're, interestingly, also those politicians in Starmer's cabinet that are of the kind of soft left. They're still the flag bearers for the soft left. And the green policy stuff is, incredibly important to Miliband. It was a big part of Labour's core vote, but now it seems to be, much like Labour's shift to the right, it seems to be another one of those policies that could be in question, especially if Labour feel like reform is nibbling at their vote. So this seems to be some pushback of briefing from Miliband and Rayner's camps, potentially, to say that net zero policies and their green pledge isn't going anywhere.
Your eyes slightly raised when the word soft left came out, but anyway.
In Labour parlance, that is the term. It's capitalised. It's a proper noun, but nonetheless. I think the fascinating thing about this is that there was a report, this amazing report from the Tony Blair Institute yesterday, which did not say that we shouldn't do net zero, but it did say that we, the West, are doing net zero the wrong way. And I think the argument was perfectly solid. It was that voters were never going to vote for sustained falls in their own living standards. And policies that do that are going to wear down support for net zero, especially because the overwhelming growth in emissions is in the developing world rather than here. And this was obviously unhelpful for the government just ahead of the local elections. And so then the TBI scrambled out this quote that said, actually, the British government's approach is the right one.
Yeah.
No one who's
because they weren't specific. He was not specifically talking about the British government.
Wasn't. But you'd think that if he was right, if this report was being written and there was an example of one national government that was actually doing things correctly, and it happened to be the one that was led by the Labour Party, we'd probably have got into the report. So Blair does think an awful lot of, well, these are reporting about a lot of what the government's doing is counterproductive. And this is an example because, of course, what does this do? Pushes up house building costs, right? At the very time when we've got a cost of living crisis and they're trying to increase house building. That's the challenge.
Very interesting. OK, just as they're trying to get more people in jobs, they also changed national insurance for employers as well. So there we go. Similar stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Lots more still to come, including musical chairs in Donald Trump's cabinet. We'll have the latest on the ousting of Mr. Trump's national security advisor. Back in a moment.
Gates, 1945, the day of victory in Europe.
Hostilities will end the 8th of May. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing.
80 years on from that historic moment, we will be at the heart of the events as we reflect, remember and celebrate together. Join us for the full story of VE Day on Sky News.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from the UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down. As them say, God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Sky News, get the full story first. Free wherever you get your news. Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Henry Hill and Zoe Grunewald. Welcome back to both of you. So, Signalgate, if you remember, it was who read the messages about the American attack on the Houthis in Yemen. Trump ditches Mike Waltz after MAGA wrath builds against his national security advisor. Who knows if it's wrath, but it was definitely an error to include a journalist on your chat group, wasn't it? Is this just a delayed reaction to that, do you think?
Well, it seems to be partly that, perhaps, but also simply a genuine difference of views, because the National Security Advisor was a sort of neocon, wanted a stronger position on Russia, whereas Donald Trump is basically an old-fashioned, by old-fashioned I mean pre-1912, American isolationist. Really doesn't want these entanglements.
I'm trying to think of American pre-1912 policy.
But basically before Wilson got them into World War I, right? But just like didn't want anything to do with anything this side of the Atlantic, like broadly not interested in getting involved in either World War I or World War II, really. And Trump's much more like that. And I suppose the remarkable thing about that is presumably he knew that before he made him National Security Advisor. So you suspect that it's probably either, maybe it's Signalgate, but it is a delayed response to that. Maybe he just didn't want to ruin his first 100 days. But it could also just be this being the Trump administration, pure personal, like, court politics, right? Like, Waltz is not popular with somebody else who has the presidency. Like, I think it's much more like an old royal court than many politics in the modern era that we get to see.
Yes, and these are not Congress-approved positions. You can chop and change them as much as you like. And looking back at the first term for Mr. Trump, he had 6, 2 of them acting, and in it only for days, to be fair, but 4 main ones. Still 4 main ones in 4 years is still, you know, chundering through them quite quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, he has a precedent for doing this, I think. And I mean, it is interesting. You talk about, I definitely think part of it is Trump wanted a kind of flawless, if you can call it flawless, first 100 days, and then it's quite significant, I think, just mere kind of hours later or days later he makes this decision. But there was also some suggestion, as you say, Henry, of this court politics. So Waltz was said to have got on the wrong side of the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. This is according to the Times. They said that he treated her like staff and didn't realise he's the staff, she's the embodiment of the president. Obviously, also Laura Loomer, who's the far-right activist, also didn't like him and spoke quite actively about how he wasn't aligned with the MAGA movement. So it feels like, as well as making the fatal and terrible incompetent mistake of adding a journalist to a classified group chat, he just was also getting on people's last nerve and getting on. And the big question now is, will Pete Hegseth face the same fate? But if he continues to kind of keep the ear of the president, then he'll probably survive, because that is how a Trump presidency works.
Yes. Mr. Trump on his way to Alabama. I think these are the latest pictures. And in terms of Mike Waltz, the mood music all day he's been fired, but clearly not. It's been moved to, or the prospectively moved to the US ambassador role at the UN, which does need approval. So we'll have to see what happens with that, won't we? Yeah. And anyway, all fun and games as ever. Let's go on to the Daily Mail. NHS fat jabs at the pharmacy.
Yeah, so this is basically a contract that has been signed with, I think, an unnamed pharmaceutical company to provide Ozempic and Mounjaro, which are these weight loss jabs, and to provide them on the NHS for a fixed price of £9.90 and to make them available through pharmacies. Wow. Now, that is quite low. Now, this is not a national rollout. This is a trial. So presumably it will be to see whether, because this will involve, I think currently you need to get it on prescription, which means that you need to go and see a GP and all of that, whereas this will be simply an assessment in the pharmacy. So it's massively lowering the barrier to entry. So I suppose this will be, one, does this work? And two, is it safe, right? Because presumably it will be safe enough that they've agreed to try it and move it off the list of highly controlled drugs, but it's good to have a broader test before you simply let everyone have it, but broadly in pharmacies.
Run out of time. Lots more still to come, obviously. Henry, Zoe, thank you. See you in the 11. Here is the weather. One more day, maybe.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, today brought the highest temperature of the year so far and the warmest start to May, but the next few days will be cooler. Most places will start fine tomorrow. Northern Scotland, though, Wales, central England and the south of Ireland will see isolated showers. Mild in the south, chilly in the north. Expect plenty of morning sunshine. Cloud will build across northern parts by lunchtime. Some coastal areas of East Anglia and southern England may see misty low cloud moving into. Early showers in the south will fade to leave most places dry. The breezy north of Scotland will keep a few.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
So looking ahead to the local elections and this by-election as well, the one call and Helsby by-election, we will have full reaction and analysis on that after this.